Hi, welcome to Take Five's week 3 of our Easter series called Brightside. Let's check it out. All right, so this past weekend was Easter Sunday, Easter weekend, and we talked about some of our favorite Easter traditions. Some of you guys talked about, your favorite Easter egg hunt, some of the meals you do. Some of you went and served during Easter weekend with your families. There was just a multitude of traditions that you guys did. I shared one of my favorite traditions from when I was in 5th grade, which was when I'd go over to my grandma Miller's house, which was my mom's mom, and she would spread these eggs all over the yard if it was really nice outside. If it was, rainy and cold, we'd do it inside. But either way, we got to do an Easter egg hunt. And there was about 12 of us cousins, and in 12 different eggs was $25 each. That's a lot of money. Now, we didn't know what eggs they were, so we just grabbed eggs and got everything that we found, and then we'd open them up. Now, sometimes me or one of my other cousins would have like 5 eggs with $25 each in it. That's a lot of money. But my grandma was a fair grandma. She didn't actually let us keep it. Each one of us got $25 an egg from each egg. So we had to trade with our cousins when we got too much money, which makes sense because, grandma can't have favorites. She has to be fair to all, or at least my grandma did. The other thing I loved about Easter was the food. Oh my goodness, my grandparents grew up Amish, so we had homemade food from scratch. And just at the end of the meal, I just would want to sleep because I had so much food in my stomach. Oh, it's making me hungry just thinking about it. Apple pie, turkey, or ham, depending on the year. Oh, food. But anyways, that was some of my favorite memories of Easter Sunday. And Easter, it's a big deal. It's a big deal in our culture, whether you're Christian or non-Christian, because if you're non-Christian, you kind of go towards like the Easter bunny and candy and that sort of thing and family time. But in the Christian realm, we have something else that goes along with all of those other traditions, and that's Jesus and what Jesus did for us during this weekend. Now, Easter is, when we think of it, we think of happiness and just joy. But really, when Easter was happening, when that weekend happened, it actually was kind of dark. It was a really, really dark moment for the people around Jesus. See, during what we call Holy Week, which was after the donkey and Jesus rode in together, like Jesus rode in on the donkey. We talked about that last week. If you didn't see last week, pause this video and go to week 2 and watch it first. But Jesus rode in on a donkey into Jerusalem, and that started Holy Week. And during Holy Week and towards the end of Holy Week, Jesus was just overwhelmed and he needed to pray. So he went to the garden and he prayed to his Father. Now, what's really different about what Jesus prayed is that Jesus actually said this line. He said something along the lines of, God, if it can be done, take this cup from me. Take this cup from me? What is Jesus talking about? Well, actually what he meant is he was asking God if there was any other way to save these people, if there's any other way to save humanity from their sins. God, let it be done and let me keep living. Jesus actually asked if God can do this differently. Now, the difference between maybe us, who would probably be pleading for our lives, and Jesus is that when God said, there's no other way, you have to do this, Jesus agreed, and he still went through with the cross. Because see, once he was done praying in the garden, he knew Judas, a disciple. If you don't know who Judas is, Judas was one of the disciples, and he actually betrayed Jesus. He sold Jesus out for some money to the Roman militia. So Jesus knew Judas was coming with this militia, this small army. And when Judas got there with the soldiers, he went and he kissed Jesus on the cheek to let the soldiers know which one was Jesus. Now, the soldiers were about to go arrest Jesus, and there was another disciple who was very close to Jesus named Peter. And Peter got so fired up, like he exploded in emotion, and he grabbed his sword and he slashed. He didn't care where his sword hit. He was just so concerned and did not want Jesus arrested that he cut off an ear of a servant of one of the soldiers. And Jesus, in his love and mercy, but also in his firmness, said, "Stop. Don't try to stop this. We need this to happen. I have to do this. I have to be arrested." And he picked the ear up and he placed it on the servant and he healed the servant's ear. Wow. Like, how many of you would have been like, "Yep, Son of God, we're good. We believe. We're good. We won't arrest you"? I probably would have. Or at least I hope I would have. But see, they didn't want to see that. They didn't want him to be the Son of God. They wanted him gone and out of the picture. So they arrested Jesus and took him in front of Pilate. Pilate was a leader, a governor, kind of like a mayor of the city. And Pilate, before Pilate interrogated him, something that they do beforehand is they beat them with a whip. So Jesus was arrested, he was beaten, he looked bad, he had cuts and bruises and probably was exhausted, and he was taken in front of Pilate, and Pilate talked to him and to see if he actually had any real crimes. And Pilate found no crime, nothing wrong that Jesus has really done. And he said, "Here's your king, he's done nothing wrong." But see, in John 19:15, the people said this. But they shouted, and this was to Pilate, "Take him away. Take him away, crucify him." They didn't care that he did nothing wrong. They wanted him gone. They wanted him crucified. So they took him away, and they probably beat him some more and made him even more just broken. And they put the crown of thorns on his head. And then when it was time to crucify him, they made him carry this huge cross that weighed him down, and not just across a flat lane, but up a hill. It was so heavy that he couldn't do it, and they actually had to get somebody else to finish carrying the cross up the hill. And there on that hill, they nailed his hands and his feet to the cross. And that was the darkest moment. Because as he's sitting up us, like nailed up on that cross, hearing people yell at him and mock him, he could have saved himself. He had the power to do it, but he didn't. He didn't because he wanted to save us, to save you from sin. So on the cross, he died. And it was so dark after that. And it felt dark the next day and the next day. But see, even though that morning of the third day probably felt a little dark, something happened. Something amazing happened. There was an earthquake, and the stone rolled away. And Jesus came back to life. He defeated death for us. Wow. Wow. So in the midst of the dark time, in the midst of some very dark events, we still had a light come and shine to us. And that light is Jesus. He is our hope. He is the King of Kings. And he's alive. So, remember week 1 when we talked about bad situations, how do we react when bad things happen? And then last week we talked about those promises that Jesus had for us. And this week we talked about, what does Easter mean to you? I know there are some of you who have gone through Kid City here at Pathway, and you have accepted Jesus as your forever friend. And I'm so happy for that. So Easter, as someone who has accepted Christ in your heart, what does Easter mean to you? Maybe you're watching this and you haven't accepted Jesus as your forever friend yet. If you haven't, what does Easter mean to you right now? Is it just candy and eggs and Easter bunny? Or maybe is there something stirring in your heart where you know there's more to it than just the Easter bunny and candy? And if that's the case, talk to your parents. I know they'd love to talk to you. Or if you want to talk to one of us in Project 5, when you come this weekend, pull one of us aside. We'd love to talk to you about Jesus being your forever friend. See, guys, we can find joy in the darkest of days. We just have to focus in on Jesus. So, talk with your parents, and I hope to see you in a couple weeks. What does Easter mean to you? Bye, guys. Have a great day.